My sister had me arrested and destroyed my life. When I found $10 million Nazi art has changed everything. I never thought I'd be sharing this. But after everything that's happened in the past 4 years, I need to get it off my chest. It's the story of how my sister and boyfriend conspired to steal my dreams, got my parents to betray me, and how fate, with a healthy dose of karma, turned everything around in the most unexpected way possible. Let me paint you a picture. I'm Claire, 34F, born and raised in a quintessential New England town where lobster traps are considered valid porch decoration and everyone knows which families came over on the Mayflower. My parents own Miller's Hardware, this gorgeous brick building from the 1890s right on Main Street. Think high ceilings, original hardwood floors, and windows that could make an architect weep. Growing up, I was always the different one. While my younger sister Sarah, 31F, was winning math competitions and organizing the store's inventory spreadsheets, I was sketching customers and rearranging window displays into art installations. Our parents loved us both, but made it clear which daughter they considered practical. I refused to be trapped in small-town expectations. Got my BFA from Tufts, student loans I'm still paying off, moved to Boston, and spent 10 years clawing my way up the gallery scene. Started as coffee girl at Preston Gallery, ended up as senior curator. The whole time, I had one dream. Opening my own gallery that would make art accessible to everyone, not just the champagne and caviar crowd. Enter Marcus Wellington III, yes, that was his real name, and yes, I should have seen that red flag. He literally walked into my life during a contemporary sculpture exhibition, tall, dark, British accent that made everything sound sophisticated, and actually knew his art history. Said he was looking for pieces for his venture capital firm's new offices. Asked me to dinner to discuss the selections. 6 months of whirlwind romance followed. Weekend trips to New York galleries, surprise deliveries of my favorite macarons from Paris, the works. He even started talking about investing in my dream gallery. Called it our project. I was in love, or so I thought. Meanwhile, my parents started talking retirement. The hardware store's location was perfect, historic building, prime spot downtown, and the town was slowly gentrifying as people fled Boston's housing prices. I had about $100,000 saved, excellent credit, and with Marcus hinting about substantial investment, everything seemed aligned. Sarah still lived in town, married to Tom Mitchell. Remember that guy in high school who peaked as quarterback and somehow still traded on that reputation 10 years later? That's Tom. He'd worked his way up to loan officer at Millbrook Regional Bank, and they had twin 6-year-olds, Emma and Ethan. Picture-perfect small-town success story. When I mentioned my gallery plans, Sarah was enthusiastic. Too enthusiastic, looking back. Offered to help with the business plan, saying she knew all the local players. Started driving to Boston for business meetings, about twice a month. I was touched, thinking we were finally bonding as adults. Then came the day everything shattered. I was supposed to be at a gallery opening until late, but one of our artists canceled. Came home early to find Sarah and Marcus in my apartment. In my bed. The betrayal was bad enough, but what they'd been planning was worse. For 6 months, while I'd been drafting business plans and meeting with suppliers, Sarah had been working on our parents, convincing them I was too urban now, that my fancy art gallery would fail because I didn't understand local values anymore. She had a better plan. She and Tom would buy the building, keep the hardware store's name and heritage, but modernize it with a gift shop, coffee bar, and local crafts section. Sound familiar? She'd stolen my entire business plan, just wrapped it in small-town nostalgia. Marcus, it turned out, wasn't just sleeping with my sister. He was helping them. His venture capital expertise helped Tom arrange an amazing loan package. The same investment deal he'd been dangling in front of me was going to fund my sister's theft of my dreams. I found out about the sale when Mom called, all tearful. We had to think of the family legacy, honey. Sarah's children should have the chance to grow up in the store like you girls did. My world imploded. Started making mistakes at work, couldn't sleep, lost 15 pounds in 3 weeks. My boss noticed, suggested I take some time. Then COVID hit, and Preston Gallery closed permanently. Suddenly I was unemployed. Watching via Facebook as Sarah posted about her innovative vision for Miller's Artisan Market and Gallery. The pregnancy was high risk from the start. Between the stress, the betrayal, and my age, doctors were concerned. I spent 3 months on bed rest in that tiny apartment above the diner, watching through my window as Sarah's Artisan Market slowly killed everything unique about our family store. The elderly waitress downstairs, Mary, would bring me soup and gossip about the town's reaction to Sarah's changes. Local artists were pulling their work. Longtime customers were shopping elsewhere, and even Sarah's mom group friends were starting to whisper about the store's decline. But it was during those long weeks of bed rest that I really started planning. Not just revenge, something bigger. I researched art therapy programs for trauma survivors, educational outreach initiatives, community art projects. Made connections with other galleries and artists online. Drafted grant proposals. My daughter might have been unexpected, but she gave me the time and motivation to dream bigger than I ever had before. I couldn't afford Boston anymore. Crawled back to my hometown, rented a tiny apartment above the diner, and took a job teaching art at the community center. Every day, I walked past what should have been my gallery, watching Sarah butcher my vision while my parents praised her business sense. But here's where it gets interesting. Remember Tom, the ex-quarterback turned banker? Turns out his success was built on creative accounting. Small stuff at first, fudging numbers to make loans look better, moving money between accounts to cover shortfalls. Then bigger risks, especially with the hardware store conversion. Sarah's business was hemorrhaging money because, surprise, running an art gallery isn't as simple as ordering some paintings and serving lattes. She'd bought expensive inventory that didn't sell, hired and fired 5 different managers, and couldn't compete with the new Starbucks downtown. Then Elena Chun walked into my beginner's art class. Elena Chun wasn't just any teenager. She was an art prodigy who'd already sold pieces to major collectors under a pseudonym. She'd been exhibiting secretly since she was 12, using the proceeds to fund art programs in underserved communities. When she walked into my class, claiming to be a beginner, she was actually evaluating me, testing whether I'd recognize real talent and passion, or if I was as jaded and commercial as her aunt's gallery's betrayers had been. Mrs. Chin's cultural center vision went far beyond just competing with Sarah. She wanted to create a network of community art spaces across New England, focusing on small towns where traditional galleries would never succeed. But she needed someone who understood both fine art and small-town dynamics, someone who wouldn't look down on local artists or ignore community needs. Most importantly, she needed someone who'd been burned by the commercial art world but hadn't lost their passion for making art accessible to everyone. I was 8 months pregnant and teaching watercolor to retirees. Of course I was interested. Mrs. Chin was fascinating, elegant, razor-sharp, and had a personal vendetta against Marcus's venture capital firm over a deal gone bad in Singapore. When I showed her my original business plan, she got this look in her eyes. "You understand something crucial," she said. "Art isn't about selling pretty things. It's about creating experiences, building community." The Chin family didn't just want to open an art gallery. They wanted to create a cultural center that would transform the town. In the perfect location? The empty department store directly across from Sarah's struggling business. I became project director, throwing myself into the work. My daughter Lily was born during renovation. Mrs. Chun had a nursery installed in my office and hired Elena as my assistant/babysitter. We designed something revolutionary: state-of-the-art galleries, artist studios, education spaces, and a cafe that served actually good coffee. The contrast when we opened was delicious. While Sarah hosted wine and paint nights and sold mass-produced, artisanal crafts, we brought in serious artists, launched virtual reality installations, and started a scholarship program for local kids. Our cafe became the town's hot spot, and our educational programs had waiting lists. Sarah tried to compete, but it was like watching someone who'd learned about art from HGTV try to run the Louvre. She ordered mass-produced canvas prints from Alibaba, claiming they were artisanal. Started hosting paint and sip classes where bored housewives reproduced the same generic sunset while drinking boxed wine. When a local artist called her out on Facebook for selling fake Native American crafts, she blocked them and doubled down, taking out more loans to order even more factory-made, authentic pieces. The real artists in town, the ones who'd been quietly creating in their home studios for years, the ones I'd planned to feature, boycotted her completely. But Sarah didn't understand the art world's nuances, the relationships, the timing, the curation. She just threw money at problems while I built something meaningful. Then the house of cards collapsed. Someone, Mrs. Chin denies involvement, but I have my suspicions, tipped off the bank's corporate office about irregularities in Tom's loan approvals. The investigation uncovered everything: the cooked books, the hidden losses, the illegal fund transfers. Tom lost his job, their loans were called in, and suddenly the mighty Mitchells were facing bankruptcy. Sarah showed up at my office, mascara running, designer handbag, bought with stolen dreams, clutched to her chest, blamed everything on Tom, swore she never meant to hurt me, begged me to help them keep the building, said she'd make it right, give me partial ownership. I let her talk, waited until she ran out of words. Then I showed her 3 things. My original business plan with her notes in the margins, planning the theft, the email she'd sent Marcus about me, mocking my pretentious art dreams, bank documents showing she'd started the purchase process before ever telling our parents about her better idea. "The building's going up for auction next month," I told her. "The Chun family will be bidding. I suggest you focus on packing." But karma wasn't done yet. Remember Marcus? Turned out he'd been running his own little scheme, embezzling from his venture capital firm. When the investigation into Tom's loans started drawing attention, Marcus tried to run. made it as far as Logan Airport before the FBI caught him. The cultural center's success brought its own set of dramatic challenges. Marcus, even from prison, tried to sabotage us. He had connections in the art world, start rumors about forged paintings in our collection, had his venture capital friends attempt hostile takeovers of our smaller partner galleries. But his biggest move came when he contacted Sarah with a scheme to regain control of the properties. From his prison cell, he'd been pulling strings, using his old venture capital connections to arrange financing for Sarah to open a competing gallery chain. His pitch was simple but devious. They'd use her local girl makes good story, paint me as the elitist outsider who'd stolen her family legacy with foreign money. They'd target the same small towns where we were planning to expand, but undercut us with mass-produced art and flashy marketing. What Marcus didn't know was that Sarah had been working with the FBI since her move to Ohio. After hitting rock bottom, she'd finally realized the extent of his manipulation and turned informant. Every call, every plan, every scheme was being recorded. His prison sentence doubled when the new evidence came to light. But the real drama was just beginning. During the investigation, we discovered something that shook me to my core. Marcus had a whole other family in London, a wife, 3 kids, and an art gallery empire built on stolen dreams just like mine. His wife Charlotte flew to Boston to meet me, and the revelations kept coming. Charlotte and I merged our galleries into an international artist protection network. We created a database of known art scammers, helped small galleries identify fraud schemes, and established a legal defense fund for artists and gallery owners who'd been victimized. Mrs. Chin's investment group provided the financial backbone, while Elena's social media savvy helped us reach younger artists. The network exposed dozens of similar schemes across Europe and Asia. Tom, trying to reduce his sentence, revealed connections to art smuggling rings that had been operating through small-town galleries for decades. Sarah's detailed records of Marcus's operations helped Interpol crack a major art forgery ring in Florence. But success brought dangerous enemies. One night, our main gallery was broken into. Priceless paintings were slashed, and a threatening message was left, written in expensive red wine across our largest exhibition wall. Art is for the elite. Stay in your lane. Instead of backing down, we turned the vandalized wall into an exhibition itself. The price of accessibility became our most powerful show, featuring the slashed paintings alongside stories of art world gatekeeping and elitism. Artists worldwide began sending us their own stories of discrimination and exclusion. The exhibition went viral, sparking a global conversation about who gets to decide what art is worth. Then came the biggest twist of all. The vandals, it turned out, weren't connected to Marcus or the art smugglers. They were hired by a group of blue-chip gallery owners who saw our community-focused model as a threat to their business. Their attempt to frighten us instead unleashed a revolution in how art is bought, sold, and appreciated. We launched a digital platform that democratized art sales, letting artists set their own prices and connect directly with buyers. Traditional galleries called it the death of curated art. We called it liberation. Small-town artists who'd never had a chance at representation were suddenly selling pieces to collectors worldwide. Sarah, watching all this unfold from Ohio, made a bold move. She took her community college art history knowledge and started a YouTube channel exposing art world scams and teaching people how to spot fraud. Her insider perspective and genuine remorse made her surprisingly effective. The channel took off, and soon she was partnering with our network to educate small gallery owners. Lily, now 5, has started her own artistic journey. She and her London half-sister, Emma, collaborate on digital art pieces despite the ocean between them. Charlotte and I co-parent across continents. Our shared experience with Marcus transformed into a powerful partnership that's reshaping the art world. Last month, we hosted our first international small-town arts festival. Galleries from tiny communities across 4 continents participated. The same wealthy collectors who once sneered at local artists were now bidding thousands for pieces from unknown creators in rural villages. Mrs. Chin's vision had evolved beyond anything we'd imagined. We weren't just making art accessible. We were fundamentally changing who gets to decide what art is valuable. The hardware store where I once dreamed of a simple gallery had become ground zero for a global art revolution. Tom, still in Ohio, recently wrote to me. He's teaching basic accounting at the same community college where Sarah takes classes, using his own story as a warning about financial fraud. His letter included an unexpected detail. He's been painting in prison art therapy classes, discovering a talent he'd suppressed since high school because it wasn't practical. The final irony? Marcus's prison cell overlooks a community art center we helped fund. Every day, he watches local artists and students create, learn, and thrive. Everything he tried to destroy, flourishing despite him. Mom and Dad have fully embraced our success, but in unexpected ways. Dad started woodworking classes in our makerspace, creating beautiful pieces that blend hardware store aesthetics with fine art sensibility. Mom, inspired by my great-grandmother's story, started a scholarship specifically for female artists over 50 who'd put their dreams on hold for family. The hardware store's basement held more secrets than just architectural drawings. During renovation, we discovered a hidden room behind a false wall, filled with paintings that had been missing since World War II. It turned out my great-grandfather, who everyone thought just sold nails and hammers, had been part of a network protecting art from Nazi looters. He built the secret room to hide pieces entrusted to him by Jewish families fleeing Europe. The discovery put us at the center of an international restitution effort. Art historians and museum curators descended on our small town. Some of the paintings were worth millions, but more importantly, they helped reunite families torn apart by history. One elderly woman from Austria found her grandmother's self-portrait among the collection, the only image of her family that survived the Holocaust. But with this discovery came danger. Marcus, from prison, realized one of the paintings matched a piece he'd sold years ago, meaning he'd trafficked in Nazi-looted art. His old associates, fearing exposure, sent professional art thieves to destroy the evidence. They broke into the gallery during our first major exhibition, taking hostages and demanding the newly discovered collection. What they didn't count on was Charlotte. Her background wasn't just in art authentication. She'd worked with art recovery teams and had tactical training. While I kept them talking about the painting's value, she orchestrated an escape plan using our gallery's unique architecture. Mrs. Chin's security team, along with local police, surrounded the building. In a twist that felt like something out of a movie, Sarah played an unexpected role in the crisis. She happened to be visiting that day, hoping to discuss her rehabilitation program. When the thieves burst in, she recognized one of them, a former client from Marcus's venture capital firm who'd been involved in their original scheme to steal my gallery. Her knowledge of their operation proved crucial in predicting their moves. The standoff lasted 6 hours. The thieves had us trapped in the main gallery, surrounded by priceless art and terrified visitors. But they didn't know about the secret passages my great-grandfather had built, the same ones that had once saved precious artworks and lives. Using Sarah's inside knowledge and Charlotte's tactical experience, we managed to evacuate most of the hostages through these hidden routes. The crisis ended in a way none of us expected. Tom, who was supposed to be in Ohio, had actually been working undercover with the FBI's art crime team. The whole rehabilitation program had been part of a deep cover operation to infiltrate Marcus's stolen art network. He'd been gathering evidence for months, working to make amends for his part in the original betrayal. When the thieves realized they were surrounded and their true connection to Marcus's art trafficking ring was exposed, they tried to destroy everything, setting fires and slashing paintings. In the chaos that followed, Sarah saved the Austrian woman's family portrait at the risk of her own life, suffering severe burns in the process. The aftermath transformed everything. The discovery of Nazi-looted art in a small-town hardware store made international headlines. Marcus's art trafficking ring was exposed, leading to raids on galleries and warehouses across 3 continents. The investigation revealed that some of the world's most prestigious galleries had been dealing in stolen art, using small-town fronts like Sarah's former shop to launder pieces. Sarah spent months in the burn unit. During her recovery, she worked with Holocaust survivors and their families, documenting their stories and the artworks that had been saved. Her YouTube channel evolved into a serious documentary series about art restitution and justice. The guilt of her earlier betrayal drove her to work tirelessly to make amends, and in the process, she found her true calling. Tom's undercover work led to the recovery of hundreds of stolen masterpieces. The quiet accounts manager who'd once cooked books to impress his wife had become instrumental in one of the largest art recovery operations in history. His understanding of financial fraud combined with his new passion for art made him uniquely qualified to track the money trails of art trafficking networks. Lily and her half-sister Emma started a children's art program specifically for families affected by art theft and fraud. Using digital tools, they help kids recreate lost family artworks, healing generational trauma through creativity. The program went viral after Emma recreated a painting her grandmother had lost during the London Blitz. Using only family descriptions and AI technology Lily helped develop, Mrs. Chun revealed that her family's connection to stolen art went deeper than we'd known. Her grandfather's entire collection had been seized during the Cultural Revolution. Some of those same pieces had passed through Marcus's trafficking ring. Our gallery became a center for Asian art restitution, helping families reclaim pieces lost to colonialism and conflict. The secret room in the basement is now a museum, telling the story of my great-grandfather's role in saving art and lives. Next to it, we built a research center dedicated to tracking and recovering stolen art. Charlotte runs it, splitting her time between London and Maine. Our daughters growing up between 2 continents but united by a shared purpose. My parents, finally understanding the true legacy of their hardware store, have become passionate advocates for art's justice. Dad uses his woodworking skills to create custom frames for restored paintings, while Mom manages a database of lost art that families are still hoping to find. The hardware store sign still hangs in our main gallery, but its meaning has evolved. Below it, we added my great-grandfather's newly discovered journals, documenting every piece of art he helped save. Next to these, a digital display shows live feeds of art recovery operations and restitution ceremonies from our partner galleries worldwide. The plaque beneath it all reads, "Some dreams do more than transform, they restore what was lost." The story should have ended there, with justice served and art restored. But Marcus had one final move that none of us saw coming. A week before his prison release date, a mysterious fire broke out in the gallery's restoration wing. As emergency responders fought the flames, we discovered an elaborate computer virus had corrupted our entire digital archive of recovered artworks and family claims. The attack was clearly professional, targeting not just our gallery but our entire international network. Someone had paid millions to erase decades of art recovery work, but they made one crucial mistake. They didn't know about Elena Chin's backup system. While working as my assistant, Elena had secretly developed an AI-powered blockchain database that recorded every artwork, every claim, every family story. She'd been inspired by her own family's lost art history during China's Cultural Revolution. The system was completely offline, hidden in quantum-encrypted servers across 3 continents. The real shock came when we traced the money behind the attack. It hadn't come from Marcus or his art trafficking associates. It led back to Sarah and Tom's old social circle in our hometown. A group of seemingly respectable local business owners had been running a sophisticated art forgery operation right under our noses for decades. The hardware store's transformation into an art gallery had threatened to expose their entire operation. Sarah, still recovering from her burns, recognized names on the conspirator list, people who'd written those false statements against me years ago. They'd been part of the plot from the beginning, pushing her to sabotage my original gallery plans because a real art expert in town would have eventually spotted their forgeries. The final confrontation played out during our gallery's largest exhibition yet, Lost and Found, a century of art justice. As hundreds of guests gathered to celebrate recovered artworks and reunited families, the forgers launched their final desperate attack. They'd hidden sleeper agents among the catering staff, planning to destroy both the art and our reputation in one spectacular night. What they didn't expect was the level of security Mrs. Chun had quietly installed. Charlotte's art recovery team had been monitoring chatter about a potential attack for weeks. Elite security personnel were disguised as guests. Tom's FBI unit was standing by. The attempt to destroy the gallery turned into one of the largest art crime busts in history. The local forgery ring was just the tip of the iceberg, their operation connected to major auction houses, corrupt museum officials, and even government conspiracies in multiple countries. In the midst of the chaos, something remarkable happened. Sarah, who'd been helping catalog restored artworks from her hospital bed, recognized a pattern in the forger's technique. It matched perfectly with the mysterious set of paintings we'd found in the hardware store's secret room, pieces that had puzzled art historians for months. The forgers hadn't just been copying famous works, they'd been trying to recreate lost masterpieces using techniques passed down through generations. Some of them were descendants of artists who'd lost everything in various wars and revolutions. Their crimes were motivated not just by greed, but by a twisted sense of reclaiming stolen cultural heritage. This revelation led to an unprecedented collaboration. Instead of prison, many of the forgers agreed to help restore damaged artworks and train young artists in traditional techniques that had nearly been lost to history. Our gallery became a center for both art recovery and art preservation, bridging the gap between justice and reconciliation. Marcus watched his final scheme unravel from prison, but even he contributed to the story's end. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he provided information that helped recover hundreds more stolen artworks. His expertise in art world corruption, combined with Sarah's inside knowledge of small-town dynamics and Tom's financial forensics, created a powerful new model for combating art crime. Today, the hardware store building stands as something far greater than I ever dreamed. The original sign remains, but below it now hangs a new motto, where justice and beauty restore each other. The secret room is a museum of both lost and found art, telling stories of theft and recovery, destruction and restoration, betrayal and redemption. Lily and Emma have grown into remarkable young artists, using technology to bridge the gap between lost heritage and future creativity. Their children's program has expanded worldwide, helping young people understand the true value of art lies not in its price, but in its power to heal and connect. Sarah runs our restoration education program, working with burn survivors to develop new techniques for art conservation. Her YouTube channel has become a respected resource for art crime education, helping small galleries protect themselves from schemes she once helped perpetrate. Charlotte divides her time between managing our international security network and teaching art authentication techniques to a new generation of experts. Mrs. Chin's investment has grown into a global foundation supporting art justice initiatives in communities affected by war, persecution, and cultural destruction. As for me, I finally understood that my original dream of a simple gallery had been too small. Sometimes it takes betrayal to show you your true path. Every morning, I walk past the hardware store sign, touch the spots where the gold leaf is wearing thin, and remember how this all started, with a sister's betrayal and a stolen dream that grew into a movement for global justice. The final irony? Those local business owners who tried to destroy us? Their grandchildren now attend art classes in our education wing, learning to create beauty instead of forge it. The very community that once shunned my fancy art gallery has become a worldwide model for cultural preservation and reconciliation. Marcus will be released next month. He's already asked to make a documentary about the very network he tried to destroy. We're considering it. After all, every great story needs its villain to admit defeat. When the Chin family bought the hardware store building, we found something incredible in the basement. Hundreds of original architectural drawings from the 1890s, including plans for a community art space that was never built. My great-grandmother's sketchbooks revealed she'd been part of a group of women artists who used to meet secretly in the hardware store's upper floor, sharing techniques and supporting each other in an era when female artists were barely acknowledged. It felt like generations of thwarted artistic dreams were finally finding their voice. We incorporated elements from those original plans into our renovation. The secret meeting space became our scholarship student studio. We named our main gallery after my great-grandmother, displaying her work alongside contemporary female artists. Every brick we restored, every original fixture we preserved, felt like we were healing not just my betrayal, but a century of suppressed creative dreams. I run both buildings now. The original hardware store is becoming artist studios and education spaces, but we kept the historic facade and the original sign. Mom and Dad finally visited last month. Dad broke down when he saw what we'd done with the place. He stood in front of the restored hardware store sign for a long time, touching the letters our great-grandfather had painted. Found out later he'd kept the original store ledgers from the 1920s, hidden them away when Sarah took over. He brought them to me the next day, along with my great-grandmother's sketchbooks. Turns out my artistic side had deeper roots than I'd known. She'd been an illustrator for children's books, but had to work under a male pen name. Dad admitted he'd been wrong about everything, said he'd let fear of change blind him to what could have been. Lily's turning 3 soon. She has her own art corner in my office, already showing more talent than her aunt ever had. Elena, now at RISD on a full scholarship, still babysits when she's home on breaks. Mrs. Chin is talking about expanding to other small towns, with me directing the whole initiative. Yesterday, I watched a local girl sell her first painting in our gallery. Her family couldn't afford art classes, but she'd earned a spot in our scholarship program. The look on her face when she realized people valued her art, that pure, unfiltered joy, hit me hard. She was wearing a second-hand dress, clutching a check for $500, and crying because now she could help her single mom with rent. Her mother worked as a housekeeper at the same hotel where Sarah used to host her wine and paint nights, charging $75 per person to create identical acrylic sunsets. The contrast wasn't lost on me. That's exactly why I wanted to do this. But the real validation came last week. An envelope arrived from Ohio, postmarked Columbus. Inside was a check for $10,000 and a letter from Sarah. She'd sold her wedding ring and some designer bags to make at least something right. Said she was taking night classes in art history at the community college, finally learning what she should have known before trying to run a gallery. Asked if someday, after she'd learned enough, she could intern with us. Said she'd work for free, start at the bottom. I haven't replied yet. The check's sitting on my desk while I decide what to do. Part of me wants to tear it up, but another part remembers the little girl who used to help me organize my colored pencils by shade. Maybe that's the thing about art and forgiveness. Sometimes you have to step back and let the picture develop on its own. Sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the most beautiful transformations. Sarah and Marcus tried to steal my dream, but I ended up building something bigger than I'd ever imagined. And the best part? I did it my way, on my terms, with my daughter watching. That's the thing about art and revenge. Sometimes you have to step back and let the masterpiece create itself. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more real-life stories.